Welcome to the LegalTube podcast, presented by LawyerLocate.ca. Join us as we explore the latest trends, strategies, and tools for promoting your legal practice in the digital age. Hosted by Mark Robbins, CEO of LawyerLocate.ca, LegalTube, and Digital MSpace, where we're all about legal marketing online for Canadian lawyers. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here listening and watching us. Today, we're happy to have as our guest Vanessa Shaw, who is an international business strategist who works exclusively with women in law. She's she's a founder of the Business Growth Academy. Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's great to see you here. So tell the audience a little bit more about your background.
So background is I've been doing this for 20 years now. So I'm clocking up 20 years, definitely becoming one of the OGs, I think, in the space at this point in time. Probably big claim to fame as it pertains to law firms is I pioneered the first ever major virtual coaching program in a major law firm in Europe back in about 2006. So when coaching really wasn't a thing, and to put it into context, I'd even proposed Skype for our delivery mechanism, and that was way too advanced back then. So
wow.
I've been, as I say, been doing this for a while. Obviously, I'm not from the States. I'm actually British by way of Switzerland and France. So I've really lived in multiple countries and then landed in the States nearly 13 years ago, and then really built the business up from there. And we were kind of very focused on women. And because I've just worked in, with a lot of attorneys over the last 20 years, women attorneys kept kind of showing up. And frankly, they're a ton of fun to work with. So what we do today is exclusively about helping women attorneys grow and scale their firms without burnout. I mean, it's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's terrific. So obviously, we're a more Canadian-centric legal program because that's what we exclusively work with. And the Canadian legal market with women and male, the landscape has changed a lot over the last 20 years. So the parent company or our sponsor, LawyerLocate.ca, was started 24 years ago as a legal online referral service and directory for Canadian lawyers exclusively. And when that company started, there was a marked change in how Canadian law was building out. The large, huge multi-province firms were dying off, and we were seeing more and more sole proprietors and boutique firms were growing. And that's what the market is like now. There's still a few big firms in Canada, but not nearly as many as there used to be. So our challenge with LegalTube is to start talking about how has marketing changed for lawyers in general in Canada. We went in Ontario with the Ontario Law Society from the only advertising that was allowed in 2000 was Yellow Pages. You couldn't have a commercial, you couldn't have a billboard, and God forbid you did anything online. That finally evolved and they were allowed to advertise more traditionally. So that opened up a big marketplace. How would you view, even female lawyers in Canada, how would you view the steps that they should take to market their practices?
Yeah, great question. And again, I think we've got probably a very similar size market as well, because we're definitely in that small solo boutique, type firms. Certainly where my heart is as well. And I think honestly, one of the first questions is even, are they marketing, right? I mean, before we go to how to, is are they? Because what we see a lot of times is, it's inbound marketing, as in the phone is ringing, they've got a good reputation, perhaps they're getting referrals from other attorneys, but it's not the pathway to grow because it's not predictable. And so that's oftentimes when those first kind of conversations come, to us is, the marketing is incredibly ad hoc. And our kind of stance on this is, we know that with law firms, I think there's two forms of marketing that still really stand the test of time. And of course, there's some very creative options now because there are just so many more options available, to us generally in small business and to law firms as well. But I think, standing the test of time is still educational-based marketing and relationship marketing. Those two, even when I was, working in the big law firm way back then, that's how they were building their business, right? It was running seminars, it was workshops, it was educating, bringing people together, hosting events, networking and building those relationships. And we often say, like, that's often a really first place to start, because you don't have to be a copywriter. You don't have to learn about social media. It's probably as well, when we first kind of chat to our attorneys, oftentimes they'll say, it's actually how I got the firm off the ground in the first place, right?
Right.
They've got kind of buried, and some of those things get forgotten. So I think first and foremost, it's like, let's come back to some of the things that you already know were working. And then from there, where we like to come to, because the next piece I think that we hear, Mark, is, well, I should be doing social media. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Perhaps it's paid ads. I mean, is it a billboard? Is it this? Is it, that? Should I be writing, in a local magazine? All of these different things. And there are so many choices that it's overwhelming. And we always come back to, for us, and I'm sure you do something very similar with your clients because you are in marketing, we've got to come back to the foundation of, like, who are your ideal clients, right, that you're really wanting to target? Now, in our world, we've referred to this as champagne clients. And those are the ones that our attorneys do their best work with. They love working with them. Hopefully they're even, depending on the area of practice, I might say, but they might be long-term repeat business.
Right.
They can even become, like monthly recurring retainers. But it's like, who are they? Because when we're trying to target everybody, we typically target nobody, and then the messages get bland.
Right.
And then we really start to look at, what are the best ways to get in front of them? And sometimes, again, let's also track metrics. Let's find out, where did your last 10, 30 clients actually come from? Are you tracking these things? Because you can spend a lot of money on lots and lots of different marketing things, right? And not get ahead. And then I would say the next side to that we come to is, there's the, where do we really think your market is hanging out? That's one thing. And then secondly, if we're dealing with small firms that don't have a ton of resources and the owner is still doing part of the marketing, right, and they're not necessarily ready to outsource it, I mean, great if they can, but sometimes there's that hybrid, right, that it's just the budget doesn't allow for it for now, and or frankly, they shouldn't remove themselves fully from it. Now I'm going to come back to, frankly, what are your strengths? Because if you don't like writing, if you're drafting all day long and you don't want to get into marketing, why do that? But a lot of our attorneys will say, oh, I love giving a presentation. I love getting out into the community and, sharing about, estate plans or whatever it might be, elder law and all the things they need. I'm like, let's do more of that, right? That's marketing and it can be highly effective. So again, we kind of start broad, but let's really come back to those ideal clients. Let's really consider where they are first. Otherwise, we've got this scattergun approach. And frankly, let's go with your strengths, right? And leverage those things so that you can get out, in front of your clients. And I don't know what you're seeing in terms of Canada. What we're definitely seeing with some attorneys here in the States is there's a level of creativity that I'm seeing with law firms that is not the traditional, kind of almost the stuffy, very educational, very factual. And particularly I'm seeing this amongst women, that they're just getting super creative, using different personalities and personas on things like TikTok and
Right.
Instagram, so that what might be considered a somewhat dry topic, if we really go just from the kind of academic level, they're turning it into something that is so approachable. And it's almost like, it's edutainment, it's educational and it's entertainment. And I think that's something we've started to see, more recently, some real creativity, which personally I'm all for.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I recently had a guest, Vancouver lawyer, Kyla Lee, who's a DUI specialist, quite well known, but she absolutely has mastered the social media platform. Her TikTok channels blow up everything she does. She will do TikToks on different foods with a breathalyzer. So, well, let's see if this is going to read. And she has a huge following. Then she spins off and has another channel that she rates potato chips. Okay. But she's highly intelligent. She's been highly decorated in the BC Law Society. She's a very successful lawyer. Um, in Canada, there's been a big shift. You're right. There has been, depending on the practice area, it's not everybody, but most practice areas generically are embracing social media. One, it's cost effective. Two, if you have staff, if you're a small boutique firm and you have some staff that are creative, it's not you. I have some lawyers that just absolutely refuse to go on camera, which I always find strange because if you're a practicing trial lawyer or litigator, you're standing up in front of people all the time, but you don't want to do it in front of a camera. So uh, they rely still on blogging, which I'm going to say the thing you're not supposed to say. I'm a non-believer in blogging. I think the days of blogging have been over for about 10 years now. And when I used to debate with other lawyers and other marketers about this subject, there's a gentleman you may or may not know, Kevin O'Keefe of LexBlog in the States. He's in Seattle. He has basically a legal blogging aggregate. It's quite successful. And he and I remember 20 years ago, he was in Toronto. We met at a function. And I talked to him afterwards. We were having a couple of beers, and I said, you do know that video is going to take this over. You're not. Oh, and he argued with me vehemently. And I had him back as a guest last year. And he remembered the conversation. He says, you know what, Mark, I hate to admit it. You're right. He says, I now have my own podcast. I now do interviews when I'm doing different shows in different cities. And that's taking more of it's getting more attention than my written word does.
Yeah.
So, I advise my clients. I mean, I understand why there's, I have a big employment law firm, and they firmly believe they're doing blogging, they're doing guest posting for different publications, and they really believe in it. And I said, well, that's good, but you also need to have a social media presence. You need to have a video presence. So for 9 years now, we've been doing his show. It's called Fire Away. So we do that once a month. And I'm seeing more and more in Canada, which was always very staid and restrained. Everybody's stepping out of the box. And, I remember when we first discovered TikTok, and one of these clients actually was the employment law lawyer, said, hey, have you looked at this? And I really hadn't paid attention to it when it first came on stream. And then I took a look at it, and I instantly saw what the benefit was. I said, it will humanize you. This is a platform where you can be you, not a suit and tie, talk about anything. It doesn't have to be legal. Talk about if you're a sports fan, talk about your favorite team. But it'll humanize this. The public wants to see that you're a normal human being. And that's kind of the take I get working up here.
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's back to, and that's what we say, again, I think video really is where it's at because it's building a relationship, right? And again, especially when we can share part of our personality, what's important to us. I mean, I put a fair amount out. I mean, I'm not extreme on social media, but there's a fair amount behind the scenes. So it doesn't take anybody too long to work out that I'm a dog mom, right? I just celebrated my 30th wedding anniversary. People can see where I live in the desert. They'll know that I'm an avid tennis player, right? So this is kind of that behind the scenes so that you actually have a personality as well. And I think that's what people want to engage with, right? It's not just the lawyer. It's like they're going to walk through the door, have a consultation, and they kind of feel like they've already built a relationship. And that's what I like about video is it's doing some of that relationship building for you. So I'm all for it. I think there's many different mediums, but I totally agree with you that for me now, reading, it's got to be a really good article, good article to grab my attention. And that means like it's really hooky. It's got great value. It's frankly well written. The risk now is there's so much AI that's being churned out. Everybody's, we can churn out stuff now in 5 minutes that previously used to take us 5 hours. But there's a whole lot of blandness, right? But again, and I'm a big fan as a marketing strategy of hosting events like seminars, workshops, because I think it's it's video comes the closest to the live experience. And I've always said nothing can replace you being in a live room with somebody and looking straight in their eyes, right? Or
Sure.
asking them directly that question. Or when somebody can come up to you afterwards and just say, oh my God, like you've completely shifted the way I was thinking. Right. So that's that powerful, in-person event. And video for me is really the second closest, right? Now then you start to get into the written, and yes, it can sound very well put together, but oftentimes it lacks that personality. So I often say to my attorneys, and I'm curious if you've ever shared this with yours, but I often say to them, I'm like, have you actually stopped to study how you are consuming content these days? Like, have you actually watched your own behaviors? And
Right.
it's right.
Yeah, that's fair. And you know what? Two things just circle back. So one of the things we talk about metrics in our business, and years ago, I started to see the trend that because we were a Google partner at one point, and so we got a lot of more inside information. And about 10 years ago, it was almost Google and YouTube were almost tied as the use as a search engine. I believe right now, and Google won't put this out anymore. I think YouTube is now the number one search engine in the world. It's a sad statement is that people don't want to read. It's truth, but that's the way it goes. So, but the same thing about video and images. For example, with Lawyer Locate, when somebody joins lawyer joins Lawyer Locate, they get a profile page. It's basically a mini website. It has everything, but the one main thing is that it has your picture. And so many lawyers didn't want to put their pictures up. They want just your logo. And we tracked this over 20 years. And they were getting less than 1% of the clicks that lawyers that had their picture on their profile pages were getting. And we keep going back to them and saying, look, put a picture up here, not a fake picture, not an avatar, a picture of yourself, because people want to see what you look like. There's a lot of things about just basic human nature and attractiveness, and then being attracted to someone is how you look. And, fortunately, we don't get that much resistance anymore, but it used to be a big issue.
Isn't it
And I do, and I
interesting?
see AI like you, I see the good that can be done with it if you do it properly. We're in the process of developing a legal marketing AI for Canada. I've learned a lot by going behind the door and seeing how things are built out and how it can help and how it can work. So I think somebody said, actually, a quote at Kevin O'Keefe, he said, AI is going to cure cancer in our lifetime. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that AI is not going anywhere, and you either learn to adapt, because this is the next revolution in my mind. The AI is the next industrial revolution. So we embrace it. We use it I think, intelligently. For production, it is absolutely a huge time saver. I mean, it's, if I take our show that when we finish this and it's all edited and post and everything's done lower thirds, then I take that finished product and I pop it into Opus AI. Opus gives me 30 ranked and explained 60-second clips that I can now put on all the short video platforms. It takes all of 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
No, the productivity, as you say, is off the charts. There's no
yeah,
doubt about it. Yes.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So going forward with your type of not leader, well, yeah, I will say leadership. So when you're mentoring some of these female lawyers, and I'm assuming that your strategies work for any lawyer, it doesn't have to be a
Totally.
female lawyer.
Yeah.
Um, when you're doing, you've talked about the marketing. What about the business strategy? Because this is something that I have some pretty strong opinions on. So I'd like to ask you, what is your advice to lawyers on their business strategies?
So typically we're helping them develop that, right? Because that's what they come to us. They probably haven't had one. They've grown up to a certain point. I mean, I spoke with somebody yesterday. She's running a multi-million-dollar firm, hugely successful, and she was like, "I've already outgrown what I thought I was going to be capable of, and now I'm kind of going, what's next?" So that's probably where we meet a lot of our women. They're kind of like, "Oh, I'm surprised I got it this far. What's next?" We've got a couple of unique ways of really accessing. I mean, business strategy is the how to, right? But you've got to start with vision. It's like, where do we really want to go to? Strategy is about how we're going to start to actually get there. And honestly, what I find is that most people, when we talk about vision, it is really lacking in clarity. I'm one of the first people that probably has those conversations. And if I can't understand it, if I can't see it clearly, it lacks, clear metrics. As I say, the picture isn't painted. It's not compelling. Right, that means that the leader of the law firm is going to struggle to get behind it, but they're certainly going to struggle to get their teams on board with it as well. And one of the ways that we start that's very unique in the work that we do is we actually kind of start like reverse vision in a way. We start with like, what's not working for you, right? Really, what's not working? What are you tolerating in the business right now? You've grown it to a certain amount. A lot of that is often being not by intentional design, by default. I find that a lot of our clients, possibly they've come from big law, they've come from more male law firms. They've possibly still inherited some of those patterns that they frankly don't want to have in their own law firms, but yet they're finding themselves falling into those traps. So we actually kind of start with, I call it the $1 million question, which is it's based off a story where one of our clients answered it, and basically we then discovered $1 million that was sitting in this case, it was a medical practice. Right. Because of everything that she was tolerating, right? And what she was tolerating was running an insurance-based practice when she wanted to go full concierge cash pay. And then she hired us to kind of transform it. But when we can get that, what are you tolerating out on the table, right? That is the pathway to like, let's solve some of these problems. Let's look at the stories that keep you tolerating certain things and why you think you have to keep tolerating them. Sometimes, again, it's historical. Sometimes it's more psychological, because if you are tolerating a whole load of things that are very, energy draining, they're building resentment, they're building frustration, and then we try to build on top of that, you typically just get more resentment and frustration. And that is the path to burnout. And again, I know in corporate, America and other big corporations, it's very much about let's climb the corporate ladder, and you kind of keep taking on right. More stuff. And you get the big bucks is the big perk. And, you might get some time off if you're lucky. Right. But like, we're like, no, this is your own firm. You get to create it the way you want. And so what we find is that when we can start to relieve some of those tolerations, vision is really on the other side of that, right? It frees up that creativity and that permission to dream again. And like, what do I really, really want? So we've got to, you kind of like, we're starting there, as I say, between like what's not working, the tolerations, what do we really want in terms of vision? But let's make it compelling, right? Let's make it, you've got to be excited. And of course, you've got to kind of see that it's vaguely possible. Otherwise, you're going to, sabotage your way to getting there. And then from there, now we start to look into, well, what are going to be the sorts of strategies? But again, where we come in is we're often sort of optimizing the firm in the beginning stages, right? Through that, like, let's make sure that you are, are you too small? We obviously see a lot of different things, but sometimes we see too small, too many team members, like it's team heavy, right? And the revenues and certainly the profit does not support that. And again, the team members, they're not being fully utilized and doing what they be doing. Otherwise, sometimes we see as well that people have thought that growing means let's just keep adding another vertical, like another practice area. That can be relevant at a certain point, but we're a fan of like, let's really niche down and be specialist first before we start to go broad, because right, building systems and templates and being known in the marketplace and everything for kind of everything is really hard. So and of course we then look at that through the lens of, but let's look at like where the most revenue is coming. What are the ones that are most profitable? Frankly, where is your passion as the owner? So there's a lot of kind of like, let's set the stage and kind of reset the firm, reset a better foundation for growth, right? And then strategically, that has to be planned out, right? There's certain things, we've got a lot of experience doing this, but sometimes they're
Right.
like, this is what I want to do this quarter. I'm like, this is going to take you 3 to 4 quarters to get there, right? Because again, you've got to do certain things first so that, right, that is going to be a good move. I mean, again, I
We
use an example, but oftentimes I feel that when they want to hire, many times that the person they want to hire is not who they should be hiring next, for example.
we see it's funny you mentioned that the different verticals. We see this a lot with lawyers that have been out maybe 2, 3 years, and what they try to do is a shotgun effect. They will list every category of law. They'll practice everything
Yep.
and all the subcategories. So on their websites with Lawyer Locate, we'll list the 8 major categories of law and then over 150 subcategories of law because law has become so niche orientated. And they'll do that, and I'm always amazed. Going, you do understand that if I'm looking for a lawyer and it's a criminal matter, or if I'm looking for a real estate lawyer, I'm not going to look at somebody that does every type of law known to man. I want somebody that specializes in an area. And trying to explain that to these lawyers, that you've got to identify what areas of law are you strong in and focus on that and make that
Okay.
your focal point so that the public knows, hey, I'm one of the top real estate lawyers in my community, or I'm one of the top criminal lawyers, whatever it may be, family law, employment law. Don't try and do this shotgun effect. I really find that goes on a bit too much. And the part of the problem too, and I've given a lot of talks in Canadian universities, is that I think law schools in Canada do all these lawyer students a disservice by not insisting that they have a minor in business before they graduate. It's to
Oh
me, I
yeah,
see it all the time where you see,
yeah,
yeah, great lawyer, great criminal lawyer, doesn't have a clue on how to negotiate a lease. Never
yes.
mind how to deal with employees and how to do advertising and how, all the marketing stuff and all that. But anyway, I digress. So
I digress, right?
we're
Exactly.
getting near the
Digress.
end here, Vanessa.
Yeah.
So what would be your 3 top tips to female lawyers in Canada to grow their practice?
Honestly, the first one is I really would, first and foremost, I would say, really be honest. What are you tolerating right now? That's a great starting place. Get a good list. It's very revealing, and it will be very revealing as to like energy, like really what's going on. And if you're feeling drained, as I say, nobody wants to build on something when when there's a whole lot of kind of overwhelm and things going on in the first place. Um, the next step would definitely be that speciality. As you said, my husband just actually ruptured his Achilles, and so has gone through surgery and everything. Like, you don't go to see a hand surgeon when you've ruptured your Achilles. That, this is somebody that deals with athletes, and it's what he does all day long, right? It's like that builds a lot of trust, and that's why we pay them the big bucks, right? So I think that speciality. Look at your book of business. Really, who are the clients that you have loved working with? Do they fall within certain practice areas? Start to really look at their attributes. What were the problems that you just loved solving for them? Because that starts to help you really focus in on those ideal champagne clients, because that is going to be a key strategy really for growth. And I think then the third thing I would really be saying as well, because this is really the transition that we're helping our attorneys with. They're owners, but they're still typically the main practicing attorney. Yet they always say that they want to be doing less lawyering and they want to be doing more leading. And I would really encourage is that your role has to shift. If you want to grow the firm, you cannot be practicing as much law and as much in the weeds as you are today. So that just even that reflection on what is it that you love to do, what really energizes you, what drains you, so you're starting to get things off of your plate, because you will have to free up time and energy to work on growth, not just day-to-day servicing clients. And visioning that role that you want to be playing in the next iteration of your firm.
That's dynamite advice. Thank you so much, Vanessa. The time flew. We could be going for another half
It
hour
does.
for sure. It goes fast. So before we wrap it up, we will of course be putting all of your contact information on the bottom of the video on all the different platforms. But just briefly, how can people find you if they want to seek your advice?
Totally. So businessgrowthacademy.com is our main website. And we have just recently launched actually a new initiative, online community for women-owned law firms called the Legal Collective. Again, it's free. I'm sharing content. We've had already women from Europe joining. So again, it's a wonderful place to get some free, frankly, guidance on growing the business and build some really important relationships with other women-owned law firms. So again, that's on the website. And
hopefully we can get some good Canadian lawyers to get involved.
Love to have some Canadians. We're so close by. We have a lot of Canadians in our part of Arizona.
Right.
So nothing would make me happier.
That's terrific. Well, Vanessa Shaw, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. You've been a wonderful guest. You've got a wealth of information that I'm sure our listeners and viewers will learn a lot from you. And it's just been a pleasure having you on the show. Everybody, that's it for the show today. As usual, please like and subscribe so you can get information on when our next show is. If you have any suggestions or comments, please go ahead and comment. We do reply to them. And as I say at the end of every show, if you think you have legal marketing issues, you probably do. Reach out to us and see if we can help you out. Hope everybody has a great day. It's been a pleasure. See you soon.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the LegalTube podcast. Ready to take your legal marketing to the next level? Our show delivers expert insights and practical advice to help you succeed in today's competitive legal landscape. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is for you. For more information, check out LegalTube.ca. And if you have any questions, get in touch with us. Thanks for listening.